Doom brought back to the spotlight the Twitch shooter, and unlike the previous Doom 3 installment, it is closer to what the original game felt. The game often shows up on various sales events, so you can get a copy for pretty cheap. Also, this reboot is quite friendly with graphics cards that support Vulkan, and in this mini-series, we'll discover if attempting to play this game on the Xeon family of cards is doomed to failure. This is a trip to see how low can you go, so we'll start off with some cards that can easily play the game, and there is a set of 3 R9 cards as following. The R9-290X as the fastest, most power-hungry and hottest of them, powered by its Hawaii GPU. The R9-280 aka HD 7950 as a second option using the Tahiti GPU. And the R9-270 aka HD 7870 using the Curaçao GPU. I used the same Z230 workstation from HP, with its i7-4770 equivalent Xeon and 32GB of DDR3 running in dual channel at 1600 MHz. Now, in order to have a common baseline for testing with the other cards, I played the game at its lowest settings at 3 resolutions, 1080, 1600x900 and 720. But as the FPS numbers will tell you, increasing the graphical settings is a valid option, especially since we may very well hit CPU bottlenecks. Speaking of FPS numbers, we start off with 1080 resolution, where the 290W TDP R9-290X takes the lead with 160 FPS on average and 115 FPS for the 1% lows. Having the 1% lows above 60 feels excellent, and this is something to aim for. The R9-280 also feels good in this game. The 1% lows at 71 FPS is still above 60, and the average of 90 FPS also makes for a good experience, despite being almost half of what the 290X managed. The slowest of the bunch, the R9-270, got 60 FPS alright, but for the average. The 1% lows went into the mid-30s. Now, while not ideal, the game experience is still good, and my feeling is that the game can be played on this card just fine, in Full HD. Still, one easy way to increase these numbers is to decrease the resolution, and at 1600x900, the R9-270 averaged close to 80 FPS, but the 1% lows are still below 60, hovering in the low 40s. So if 1% lows above 60 is a must, then you'll need to drop the resolution more with this card. As for the R9-280, the average creeps above 100 FPS and the 1% lows at 79 FPS provides a better performance margin than what the card had at 1080. The R9-290X doesn't really need the lower pixel count. However, the average does go up to 178 FPS and 1% lows reach 127 FPS. My hopes that the 720 resolution would help the R9-270 reach above 60 in the 1% lows had to be dashed. Don't get me wrong, at 48 FPS for that 1% lows and 97 for the average, you can finish the game and not blame the card for any difficulties you might encounter. However, that same 1% lows number does point out that there is a bit of a class difference between the 270 and the R9-280. It may be that the increase of VRAM from 2GB to 3GB did it, or maybe the increased bus from 256-bit to 384, or the increased shader count. I cannot tell for sure. Whatever it is, it got the R9-280 providing 1% lows above 100 FPS, while reaching an average of 140 FPS. The even higher performing card, the 290X, averaged just 182 FPS, with 1% lows at about 128. The performance boost is too little for the fraction of pixels that have to be rendered. We are approaching a system bottleneck. Now, if I were to choose a card to play the game on, I choose based on a couple of requirements for the 1% lows. Have it be above 60, and have it be about 70% of the average. 2 cards meet this criteria, but the R9-280 has the lower TDP, so I'll go with that one. That doesn't mean that I would not play the game with the R9-270. If you have one in your system, give it a try. For the next installment, we'll check how the middle performing cards of the Xeon family perform. Make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss it. As for this one, we're done. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you for the next one.